Welcome to Toy Business Unboxed, your gateway to the secrets of the toy industry. Here, Hsieh, a toy entrepreneur and expert in the field.
Every product we develop is really inspired by some of the real life experience that we have with our son.
60% of all toys last year were sold on Amazon, which is incredible.
Be passionate about it because it's a road, it's a journey.
Like when you have an idea that you think is like gonna somewhat change the world, make things better, I'd say go for it.
We'll guide you through the enchanting world of toy design, marketing, and manufacturing. Now let the unboxing begin.
Welcome back to another episode of Toy Business Unboxed. Today, we're joined by Jeff, a long-time game designer who have been creating fun, family-friendly cards and board games since 2006. And you might know some of his games like Toasted or Roasted. But today, we're talking about something new that he have designed, the Campfire Smokeout, which is his first journey on self-publishing his own games. Thank you so much and welcome to the show today, Jeff.
Well, thanks, Jason. And I'm really happy to be here on your podcast.
So before we talk about your newest games, I want to kind of go into your background because you have been in the industry for so many years, like I mentioned, like since 2006. Can you kind of just share your journey so far within the toys and game industry?
Yes, gladly. So when you say I've been involved in the game industry for that long, that certainly does sound like an impressive amount of time. 2006 was sort of the moment I got inspired to sort of like, what was a bucket list thing I'd like to do? And, walk into a toy store and see a game on the shelf that I made just sort of, became that notion. And so I just started on a journey back then. And we mentioned the game Toasted or Roasted. I sort of picked a fun theme that I liked, toasting marshmallows around a campfire, developed a prototype, play tested it. But honestly, it took about 5 or 6 years before that project found a home. Since then, I've been designing different game designs and things like that. My strategy is mostly to license the game concept, find a manufacturer, a publisher that really knows what they're doing, because I've learned very quickly that I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And so it's been a very fun side gig for me, full-time, day job. But definitely have been engaged in the game making industry for a long time. I'm up here in the Boston area, so we have a robust game design community. Call ourselves a Game Makers Guild. So I've stepped into a leadership role in that group. We have a big indie game festival up here. So I volunteer on that staff to help with the sales, sponsorship sales, to help people's dreams going forward. So so those are the things I enjoyed. But also mentoring new game designers that are just trying to scratch the surface of how do I make my dream, my dream game be real, right? And so answering their questions and, giving guidance when possible. All things I very much enjoy about this aspect of the toy and game industry.
I see. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's start up talking a little bit about this latest game that you designed. What is Campfire Smokeout all about? If you can explain kind of how to play and the kind of the reason behind that as well.
All right, perfect. So Campfire Smokeout is kind of background as a product. I'd always been attracted to the 18 card format. There's several, really fun games that are just based around 18 cards, love letters. And, there's whole companies that are built around, producing, how clever can you be with 18 cards?
Yeah.
And at the beginning of COVID, I'd always had the notion that, sitting around a campfire and doesn't it always seem that the smoke goes right where you're sitting, right? And, so that was the notion, that setting would be a game. And I thought an 18 card format, keep it a simple set of components. And, some game designers with those 18 cards, you can turn a card 4 ways, flip it over to the other side, combine it, all sorts of things, right? So I started thinking about, an audience, right? Who would be playing this game? And so I really thought of a family at the campsite. Maybe they just come from the general store at the campground. They're sitting at the picnic table. They could open up this game and play it and have a great time, even with the fairly young players. But their favorite aunt and uncle would still have just as much fun playing it with them. So Campfire Smokeout, it's an 18 card game. There's this nice little package that holds the 18 cards, and so it's got some nice material on it, and we start understanding what the game is. And on the inside is just a very simple rule set. It just outlines, how to set up the game, how to play it. A couple of examples. And for components, one card represents the smoke. and
Yeah.
you just don't want to get stuck in the smoke. That's the
Okay.
role of the game. And then each of the remaining cards creates a deck, and those cards you're going to get dealt 3 of these every round, and they are wind cards. So
Okay.
if the smoke comes to you, you're going to use one of your wind cards to, in this case, blow that smoke 1 player in this direction.
Okay.
Maybe they have a wind card that they can use, that they can choose to blow it 3 in this way or turn it over 2 that way.
Yeah.
Or maybe they've got a third kind of a card which they can pick how far it goes in one direction. And so you just keep playing like that, moving the smoke from player to player until it comes to a player that has no more wind cards. That ends the round because that player's been smoked out.
Okay.
Campfire Smokeout, right?
Yeah.
So what we do is we'll take the wind card that ended the round and we'll put that face down in front of a player. That's going to mark that they've been smoked out 1 time.
Yeah.
That mean player that ended the round, they're going to start with the smoke in front of them next round. And when we all get more cards again for the next round, they're going to have to use one of theirs right away to move that smoke away. And we'll just keep playing like that until someone's smoked out 3 times, which ends the game. And
I
whoever
see.
has the fewest smokeouts is the winner.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a very simple kind of play structure, a little bit of a hot potato there, right? You
Yeah.
don't want the smoke, it's there. But, since I'm designing for a younger audience, I'm also kind of try to be sensitive to, like a group of kids picking on another kid or something like that, right? So, worked in a couple of subtle rules that keep the kids from ganging up on each other. And one of the most, clever is that if there's a tie for the fewest smokeouts at the end of the game,
Yeah.
all of the players are going to share the victory unless one of those players was the one that sent the smoke to end the game.
I see.
And now you've added on just this one extra move removed back of that hot potato. It's like you don't want the smoke, but you don't want to be the one that sends the smoke. And so now you've got a fun, little interaction there. And once the kids get that, then they really, sort of have to think about that. So, and that's Campfire Smokeout.
I see. Thank you so much for the overview. What inspired you to go with a self-publishing route this time instead of like what you have been doing with previous games, which is licensing it to bigger publisher in the past?
Right. So I continue to develop game ideas and attempt to license them. And in fact, last year I have a game that was licensed and it's coming out this fall. I'm super excited about that. More about that when the company makes the announcement. But it's very competitive, to convince a publisher or manufacturer to, put in the same amount of passion that you have for your project into a game. And it happens all the time. Publishers are licensing games and creating wonderful products. And during COVID, anecdotally, I hear that everyone designed a game during COVID. And, and with the bar being lowered on how you can communicate with a publisher, right, or a manufacturer, how you can pitch them. Like we're talking here right now, we could go online. I could switch to a camera right now and show my table and play the game right there in front of you. Or maybe I have a digital version of it. That's very easy to pull together. You don't have to invest in anything. Lots of applications that are a sandbox that you can pull components together and represent your game. So all that makes it like all these really great ideas are out there. And so, boy, I had this really fun idea about not only a game, but it as a product.
Yeah.
And, I said, well, to be honest, I said, it's just 18 cards, right? 18 cards. And I put it into a box of 12 of them that turns into a nice little display package or something like that. It's like, I could probably afford to make a lot of mistakes with this project, right? I could afford to, kind of walk down this route as the publisher, as the manufacturer. And so I just started talking with other game publishers about advice. And along the way, I had shared my vision that I really wanted it in campgrounds across America. So that was sort of another reason why I decided to manufacture it. Like a lot of game companies I would talk to, they're like, they have great distribution channels. But I would say like, well, how about campgrounds? And they're like, I really don't have a great channel into that, and for that reason, I'm not interested in doing this project, right? A little bit, maybe too far out of the lane they wanted to be in.
Yeah.
But one of the publishers knew another publisher that had created a good relationship with Wilcor, which is a distributor of equipment for campground owners, RV repair places, national parks. Yeah. So a campground owner would go to Wilcor, and buy their marshmallow sticks, buy camping chairs, buy everything you would need for a campsite, folding chairs, tarps, there's always rain. And so that was really part of my vision, was to sell to Wilcor. Also because the toasted or roasted product that Tim Pacheski at Education Outdoors has just done a wonderful job of making this product available to that camping market. And so I also kind of looked towards, how Tim had built that up and, where he had done. So anyway, I got plugged into a publisher who had experience with Wilcor and approached him with my idea, my game concept, sent him a copy to play. And he said, hey, let's set up a meeting with Wilcor. And he did that and landed the deal. And yes, they're the biggest buyer of Campfire Smokeout. Very happy.
Nice. Congratulations on that partnership. So in your journey, what would you say is your biggest surprise during this like self-publishing process?
Interesting. Biggest surprise. Part of it was how hard it is to pull together graphics, right? So, as like a game designer who's trying to sell a game concept to a publisher, right? You can invest a bit of time into a prototype, but you can do a lot of like hand tweaking of it or whatever. You're really just trying to make the one sale, and then they're going to do all of those other jobs. So just the notion of knowing when to hire help to make things come together. So definitely worked with a wonderful artist, Emily Druid at Emily at Art, and she did the very simple but impactful graphics of the game. But I decided, okay, I'm going to do all the stuff in design and, whatever tools I could learn. So hack through that. So I would just say that was the, part of the surprise. I mean, I knew I was going to run into parts of the job that either I didn't want to do or really I couldn't do along the way.
I see. Were there any major hurdle or delay that you didn't expect when you get into self-publishing?
No, in this case, because, I sort of had the notion of a selling season for these games. I know campgrounds like buy in the early spring and things like that. So I had given myself enough, ramp that would it be back in time from manufacturing in order to save, be efficient in the actual physical manufacturing of it. Combined the print run and shipping with some other games that Dan Hunzik at DPH Games, who is the publisher that I paired with on this, that is, got our Wilcor arrangement set up. So, it kind of fell into his timeline. But now we are coming to the sort of the end of this initial print run, and a couple of considerations are coming up that'll probably be pretty important decisions to make that probably could result in some delays. So obviously there's the tariff issue. These were manufactured in China. And then just another thing, as I talk to folks and things, it's a small package, right? Fits right in your pocket. You can take it camping, all those things. There's a lot of fun aspects for it being small and compact. But then, when you put a price point on it, does the consumer see or does the retailer see that that's the price point they would have put on it, and doing some things like that. So that's the other sort of challenge looking at is, do we modify the price point a little bit, or do we bring more impact into the small package? So one of the things I did with the manufacturer was, could you send me a white copy of both the package and the cards in plastic? Now I've got a waterproof version of the game.
See. Oh, okay.
Right now it's small enough to fit in a plastic bag, so that's how you would waterproof it. But if the whole package now was out of plastic, it's a very modest price to generate a deck, but that basically doubles the price of the game unit.
Does it double the manufacturer cost if you choose to make it waterproof?
In the limited number of quotes I've received,
Really?
roughly close, and then add on the tariffs. So the first print run predated the tariffs.
Yeah.
So, puts a lot of hard math on the process.
For sure. I think it's definitely a learning process. And obviously the tariff is kind of, no one was expecting that to happen this year. So that's something we all kind of have to deal with together as an industry. And I also run into a lot of tariff related issue myself.
Yes.
With my own toy company as well. So, and the next question I want to ask is, since you have also licensed several games in the past, what would you say is like the major difference between like licensing to, a different bigger publisher versus just doing all the publishing yourself?
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference is, well, I'll say two differences. One that I just thought of and one I'm going to think of. The first one is sort of the fire and forget aspect of licensing a concept, right? I mean, you develop it to a point, and depending, it could be very rough. I mean, really, honestly, some games can be pitched off the back of a napkin, right? But generally, you work a prototype up to a point, definitely playable, but where the publisher could see the product, definitely one that's conveyed the gameplay, because you need to play test it with lots of different people in your
Yeah.
target audience, to understand that it's really hitting on all things. But you only need to get it to a certain point. And once you license it, right, once you sign on the dotted line, you've given them your baby, carefully
Yeah.
package it up and hand it to them. And then they take care of everything. And then you just sit and wait patiently for the royalties to come rolling in. Very modest royalties.
Yeah.
But with Campfire Smokeout, right, it really is, if I'm not working on moving the product forward, finding another foothold, in the community, in the marketplace, then maybe no one is, right? And so now Campfire Smokeout just becomes a continual joy for me to, continue to find clever ways to market it and continue to think about, what is its path forward.
I see. So how do you currently balance like between designing, and I think you still work a full-time career on top of doing the design as well? How do you balance everything that's going on right now?
Right. Yeah, I guess that's a skill all we adults have to master. One of the parts of growing up, right? I do come from the indie board game design community. And so most of the people I interact there is a very big part of their life, but it is like a slice of their life. Honestly, my wife is very supportive, so I always have to remember to be just as supportive and thoughtful for when she asks me for a little time away. I ask for time away to go to a gaming convention where I might be playing games or pitching my games or even playing other people's prototypes to give them feedback, So, always balance the family first. And the games for me, because it was a kind of a side gig, right? I never had to make the income of it, be critical to running the household, paying the bills, keeping the lights on, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it kept a bit of pressure off and still lets it be fun for me. I know there's a certain point where it's truly a business, and this is certainly not a hobby for me. It is a business, but I've been able to keep the stakes being fairly low. And often in that case, right, the more you risk, the more there's a reward. So as a result, bringing a Campfire Smokeout to the market has been a very kind of slow and deliberate process, right? Can you get out to different venues, different conventions, spending more money to be present? Would that significantly help people's awareness of Campfire Smokeout? Get more feedback, get more tips, get more great advice, of which I've gotten a lot of great advice, and some of which I've even tried to follow.
Yeah.
But so that's just the balance there for me, is in those aspects.
I see. So what is next? Any more new games coming?
Yeah. A fun thing about designing games and sort of getting better at it as you go along is that usually the next thing, the game you've just designed is like the best game ever. You enjoy it the most. It's my favorite project ever. And then you get the next one you do is better than that one, right? I'm having more fun with it, right? So I really am having fun with two projects. Your inspiration to design board games comes from many places, but I sort of said, because I often do like this camping theme, but I had this summertime game called Flashlights and Fireflies that Game Right licensed and produced. And I thought it would really be fun. That just sort of inspired me to say, like, I really need to have a game about each season, a winter game, a spring game, a summer game, a fall game.
Okay.
And I'd had a game about the fall that was about raking leaves. I called it Leave Me Alone. And,
Leave me alone. Okay.
and you were in kind of real time trying to clear out all the leaves from your yard in a fun way, using a fun little mechanism. And if you did it just right, maybe the leaves as they left your yard would land in someone else's yard, frustrating them. And everybody's trying to do this to each other. And so I actually had an opportunity to pitch that to a company last summer, and they really loved the game concept. Now they decided they thought of an even more fun theme. And so they worked with me on, well, how could we make this fit into this world instead? And so that was actually a lot of fun. And so, like I said, we'll hear more about that. You can go to the Parajax Games website later this fall and probably see what the leaves turned into. And then I have another game, just a family fun game that's about dogs burying bones. And I've got a fun little 3D component. And I had pitched an early version of the game to a publisher, and they were like intrigued by the concept, but underwhelmed by the amount of fun that was there. Like, it's a little bit too complicated for the fun that it delivers. And that complication doesn't really aim at your target audience. So took that feedback and a bunch of other feedback I'd received and worked on it. And so about 18 months later, I was able to pitch it again. And a fun thing about this particular pitch was I was at Astra this year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, first time I was at Astra, and
Yeah.
I was there sharing Campfire Smokeout
Yeah.
and making some contacts and things like that. But I just had an opportunity to walk around and look at all the great products that are there at Astra and how were people packaging them and presenting them. And I had this sort of 3D component in my concept for this game, and I was able to get inspiration from some of the packaging I saw at Astra. So I'd mocked up a little box. And so during the pitch, I just kind of, slid this little box with a see-through panel and the component in the background and how it all worked together with the artwork. And they were like, hey, I can sort of see that, and it was really fun because I went to Astra focused on one project, but, it's just a kind of world that you can, get inspiration and advice and from a lot of different sources and angles. I mean, it's so tough to make a connection because everything has to just line up perfect. And, just the notion that someone could say yes, as long as that's out there, that sort of keeps me going to, keep designing and sharing and all those things.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So as well, kind of wrapping up today's interview, if you have to share just one piece of advice with someone that's getting started within the toys and game industry, what would that be?
So my advice, I don't think it applies just to board and card game designers. There could be some subtle nuances in the toy industry and some of the patentable type of things like that. But in my game design group, if I find an opportunity for you to share your game, right? Maybe it's to pitch a publisher. Maybe it's a game convention where you can share it with other game players and get feedback, right? I always just sign off the little message of, get your game out there. And so that would be my advice is your project, get it out there, not in the sense of get it on the shelf, right? But get it in front of people, get people to give you comments on it, get people to provide feedback, right? All of these things are going to build up. And through the act of sharing, you're going to get some advice or make a connection that you totally didn't expect. And it's going to lead you somewhere you totally didn't know where your wonderful, fun project can lead you. In the board game community, it's not completely super small, but a general rule of thumb is the best way to protect your game is to share it with as many people as possible, right? That way they'll associate that game concept with you as you're kind of bringing it through a process. So, sometimes you're tempted to kind of shelter your idea, but in the proper circumstances, my recommendation is get your project out there so you can get as much help on it as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's a very good piece of advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for our audience that would love to learn a little bit more about you and your businesses, where is the best place for people to find you online?
All right. Well, like I said, my company, A Pair of Jacks Games, family fun in 15 minutes is my motto. So you can go to pairofjacksgames.com website. And, I have a landing page up there for, each of the game concepts that'll direct you where you can buy it. You can go to DPH Games where you can buy a copy for yourself, or if you're a retailer, order from there. And then also at fair.com, DPH Games has a fair site where you can purchase it for your retail location.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for your time today, sharing your journey and some of your experiences with our audience on the show.
Yeah. Now, if you'll let me go back to the well, I do have one more piece of advice.
Sure. Go ahead.
And that's book yourself some time and interview with Toy Launch and do an interview with Jason. That's an excellent bit of advice that I would pass along to.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. We're always looking for interesting guests to interview and share their story.
I hope you find one next week.
Of course. And for our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Toy Business Unboxed podcast. We hope you have really enjoyed today's conversation and find it insightful and inspiring. If you like what you have heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. We really appreciate your support and would love it if you can leave us a review and share the podcast with your friend and colleague. For more resource, tips, and latest update within the toys and game industry, visit our website at toy-launch.com. Join the conversation and connect with us on social media using hashtag ToyBusinessUnboxed. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future episodes. Until next time, keep innovating, keep creating, keep bringing joys to toys. This is Jason Hsieh, signing off on the Toy Business Unboxed podcast. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, everyone.